All right. We are live with another episode of Hockey Royalty, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. We got a new duo here tonight. Never before, just Russell and I. Going to feel it out. Going to hit some homers or some one-timers, so to speak, for the sport of hockey. How you doing, Russell?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a fun week of development camp, and yesterday was just crazy nonsense. It was awesome.
I know. It was nuts back and forth, and I was like, my mom flew into town, and I'm like trying to be at work and like spend time with her and check Twitter and all this kind of stuff like that. It was just been crazy. So, absolute nuts. And then we went and saw a baseball game. The A's were in town, which is my team. So that's been good. How you been?
Yeah, I've been good. I've been trying to get out to DevCamp as much as I can. I haven't been the last couple of days, but tomorrow, or by the time you guys listen to it on Friday at 9 a.m., they're having a scrimmage, which is kind of going to encapsulate the whole week of development camp. So that should be pretty good. And I plan on being there. So it should be fun.
Yeah, so it's been great. We'll get to that topic a little later on, but the juice is worth the squeeze, and there's plenty of juice in the fridge. We'll start it off here. Adrian Kempe comes in 4 years, about $5.5 million there, right in the center. We knew it was coming. We didn't know how much. We figured it would either be a bigger, longer term and less money, or some of us closer to $6 million for less. But right in that sweet spot, and I really like it because the fact that it feels like he's betting on himself, right? Becoming a UFA at 29. Salary cap's going to increase. If he pots, 35 plus a couple more years, you're looking at possibly $8.5 million for a guy of his talent level.
Yeah, a lot of Kings fans are kind of a little worried about that, what if he becomes UFA and then we wouldn't be able to afford him? Well, if he becomes UFA and you can't afford him, that means he's being productive in the 4 years that during this contract. So, I mean, all in all, this is kind of the number that we pretty much expected. I think you and Joe and we've all kind of hovered around 5.5, maybe 5.75. But it was a little surprising when the news first came out about it being 4 years. We had kind of thought maybe 5, 6 to keep that term, keep him in team control a little longer. But at 4 years, we expected maybe that dollar amount would go up to maybe close to 6. But sure enough, it stayed to 5.5 or 5.5, and Rob Blake just continues to work his magic. It's been pretty incredible what he's been able to do with what he's been given.
I know with some of these contracts, you're like, okay, is that really that much? And I think it's good. And yeah, if he becomes a UFA and he gets priced out of our structure, that means he's 35, 40 goal scorer, and that's what is going to be necessary for us to win. I thought it was good, and a guy that's going to bet on himself instead of taking. He could have probably gotten a 7-year deal at less money and be like, okay, I'll take the security. But he's like, no, I bet on myself that I can do this again. I forgot to mention, though, thank you guys for coming in the chat here and live on YouTube and live on Twitter. If you guys are on Twitter watching it live, come over to YouTube so that way you can join in the chat and the fun. But I really like it. And I think that line with Fiala, I've been talking about it on Twitter with a lot of fans. A rising tide raises all boats. You're looking at Fiala's, Kempe's not really an assist man, but you got Kopitar and Fiala that can dish the puck. None of them are, Kopitar seems afraid to shoot it sometimes, but Fiala and Kempe aren't afraid to shoot it. And, you can just see, you're going to be seeing a lot of pucks fly towards the net. And I think it's going to be good. And that whole line is just going to gestate. Will Fiala be the number one scorer on the team? I'm probably guessing so, but I wouldn't be surprised with an uptick in Kopitar's production either.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about shooting the puck, because the big question with Adrian Kempe, and kind of it's been his whole career, is his consistency. And we can talk about his streakiness and this being his real first breakout year. But in order for Adrian Kempe to continue to be a consistent 30-plus goal scorer, there's really just one thing he has to do, and it's easy. It's just shoot the puck. I was bringing up some stats in 2017-18 where he played 81 games. He had 16 goals, and that was on a total of 212 shot attempts. This past season, obviously 35 goals in 78 games. He had 443 shot attempts, almost double what he had. So shoot the puck, and it'll go in the net. And I'm sure Anže will differ to him. And we have Fiala. You have Fiala now on his other side. It should be a fun line to watch, and it really solidifies the Kings to top 6.
More shots are always good, and more juice is always good coming here from Richard. I agree there, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what goes on. And I keep bringing this up because I think mentality or mental capacity for for players is huge. And he said when he stopped differing to other players or stopped taking a back seat to his line mates and really went out there and performed his game, you saw him start driving in the net more. You started to start shooting more. You started to see him not just pass the puck away. And I think it's just going to be the tip of the iceberg for his production. And, could we see 40 plus? Yeah. Could we see, and I'm looking at it this way, and, we were talking about it, I believe, a little bit on the live show and the previous show. We got 4 more years of Danault at 5, Kempe at 5.5, and Fiala at 7.8. Like, you could reasonably see all 3 of these guys outproduce their contracts for the next 4 seasons. And that's how championship teams are built, getting players to outproduce their contracts. And there is a recipe for this that you can easily see that all 3 of those guys, especially Kempe, outproduces this contract for the 4 seasons.
Oh, 100%. And even watching some of the contracts that were being shelled out yesterday, you just kind of compare it to what Kempe got and what even Phil Danault got last year. It's really incredible the value that the Kings have been able to get. They're betting on players that maybe weren't really looked at as high-end offensive producers like Danault and like Arvidsson, who went through his injuries, but they're betting on them, and it's paying off so far for LA. So, I mean, you look at the Kings salary cap right now, yeah, they're kind of at the cap ceiling. So with all the signings, the other ones we'll talk about a little later, this is pretty much going to be the team we see. So in a couple years, once the salary cap starts going up, you only have 2 more years of Kopitar at $10 million a year. And Kopitar doesn't come across as the kind of guy who's going to be looking to get close to $9-10 million again at his next contract. He's probably going to come back at a team-friendly deal. So these deals with Kempe and Fiala and Danault are going to look pretty sweet in a couple years once that salary cap actually starts going up.
Yeah, Richard coming in here with Fiala being a playmaker, it takes pressure off of Kopi and Kempe. And that's really what it seemed last year and for many years, is that they couldn't find that third. They couldn't find that third person. And who knows if Fiala will be better with Danault or if he'll be better with Kopitar. I assume he'll start on the first line. But if they can get that third and they get that line cooking just like the second line was last year, watch out, because I think Byfield and Kaliev will have a good line as well. And that's what T-Mac wants. They want to roll 4. That's what they want to do. And they don't want to have to press on Kopitar for heavy minutes for 82 games a year.
Yeah, I mean, we saw pretty much the duos be solidified up and down the lineup. You had Kopitar and Kempe. You had Trevor Moore and Philip Danault, and then sometimes Victor Arvidsson. And then even further, you had Lemieux, Lizotte. I mean, those duos were formed, but up the top line, they were really just trying to find anybody to really work there. IFL started there. Athanasiou was there. Kaliev was there. I mean, they couldn't find a top-line winger, and now that you have Fiala there, it's going to be entertaining, and the Kings finally have a really strong, solid line 1.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great, and I'm excited for the season to start there. Let's move it over to the other free agent signings here. Quite a few and some interesting ones, right? So it started out with the Grundstrom and Elias Anderson. They said, hey, we give Kempe some money. Let's make it the Tri-Corona and bring in the other 2 Swedes there. Grundstrom, I'm pulling it up here. I know Elias Anderson was at the 750 and Grundstrom was at 1.2?
1.3, I believe. Yeah.
1.3. So I think Elias Anderson was the head scratcher for a lot of fans just because of maybe where do you put him. But let's start with the guy that earned this money, with his play in the playoffs is Grundstrom there. And I think that you relatively could see a young Brown Jr. You could see a third-line player. And if Iafallo wasn't making $4 million, you probably would see him solidified with Byfield and Kaliev.
Oh, Grundstrom, he earned his contract in the playoffs. I forget, I believe it was game 4 where he had that just head straight dive into the net, and sure enough, it goes in, beating Darnell Nurse along the side. That was great, and I had mentioned at the time, it was a coming out party for Grundstrom, and this is the type of player he is. He's a physical bottom 6, middle 6 type forward who's willing to get on the forecheck, willing to throw his body around. I mean, when you watch Carl Grundstrom throw hits, they're not just hits. They're like board-shattering hits. You hear it on TV. You hear it up in the press box. They're really good hits. So, I mean, if you can have that type of player where the Kings don't really have that enforcer type gonna throw the bodies around. I mean, with Dustin Brown gone, someone's got to take that role. And if Carl Grundstrom can live up to that bidding, I think that's a really good value signing to have in the forward group.
You're looking at, I think if he gets consistent play, I think you're looking at a 15 goal scorer on the third line,
Hmm.
and the guy that can bring some toughness. I know we'll get to Lemieux here in a second, but you need those guys up and down the line that aren't afraid to back down, and they don't call him the Tonka truck for nothing. Like, he really does go out there and throw his weight around, and he has some good hands around the net. He's not afraid to go to the dirty areas, and to have a lineup of all skill players hasn't worked at all, right? You look at
Yeah.
teams like Colorado, Tampa, all bring in guys that are like Runstrom, the glue guys that come in and do what's necessary around the net, and definitely earn that money.
I think people forget that Grunstrom was a second round draft pick, so the potential's there. I mean, he's not just some undrafted late round pick. He was a high draft pick for Toronto, so that was a valuable piece in the trades that the Rob Blake did to get to bring over those players from Toronto. So if Grunstrom can live up to that potential, I mean, that's huge to have in the bottom six and play, whether he plays with Byfield or we see him on the fourth line, maybe with Lazat or so. But I really liked what I saw with Grunstrom toward the end of the year, and I know he was in and out of the lineup at times. But if he can continue to be a consistent player and just really play his role, he doesn't have to be this high end offensive producer. I mean, yeah, if he can be consistently on the forecheck and throwing his body around, I could easily see 10 to 15 goals this coming season.
Yeah, it's quite crazy, and I think the fact that you're slowly seeing it, and I know I was talking to my brothers a couple years ago. I was like, man, he was on pace for 40 something points when he got his chance, and then it just kept going back and forth, and he wasn't consistent. And we see that consistency. I think you're going to get a quality third line guy who can play up with injury if need be. Let's move it over to Elias here, hanging out with Mavari on the summertime. They're all working out together, enjoying their new money. 750K here. I think it's just the fact that he wasn't on the ice, but I think the Kings also gave a second round pick for this guy. So why not throw league minimum money to see if he can be healthy? Because all the rage last year, if you queue it up, it was Lias Anderson, Velarde, and Vladimir Tkachev, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they throw 750K and like, hey, well, if you can't scratch it here in the NHL this season, we'll put you in the A. You're a serviceable backup, and for almost nothing.
Yeah, I mean, 750K for AHL Gretzky, I think that's pretty good value. But it was a little bit of a head scratcher. I mean, with the way that Anderson was kind of really wasn't in the lineup much of last year, even when he was healthy. It was a little confusing to see them bring him back. But when you pay, like you said, when you pay a second round pick to bring in a player, you're probably going to give him a little bit more run than you would other players. So I mean, to bring him back at only 750,000. We'll see if he makes the opening night roster. I probably expect him to get placed on waivers at some point, just from looking at some of the other players that they could lose to waivers. So Jared Anderson Dolan's obviously one of them. Gabe Velarde is one of them. So it'll be interesting to see how that battle transforms in training camp. But yeah, like you talked about too. I mean, Anderson, Velarde, and Tkachev was one of the best lines in preseason. So if Anderson can get any sort of momentum going through training camp and preseason, I think that could be a really solid depth piece in the bottom six.
Yeah, here we go. Hagini comes in here and says, with the entire offense set, how do you find a spot for Velarde and Kupari? Is there a trade coming for lefty? I don't really think there's a trade coming, and I think Velarde, Kupari, and insert any name here that could potentially fit in the bottom six will have every opportunity to earn that spot.
Yeah, I think the next we can just probably hop up right into Lemieux. Bringing back in Lemieux, that kind of made that bottom six even more crowded. So that was a little bit more of like, okay, well, once you brought in Lemieux, you're looking at, okay, well, where does everyone fit now? What was Lemieux's contract? 1.35 for 2 years or 1 year, just 1 year. So,
Yeah.
I mean, to bring him in, it made a lot of sense with Lemieux because he brings a grit and tenacity that really no one else on the lineup can bring. But it does make everything crowded down there. So, yeah, what does that mean for Velarde? What does that mean for players like Kupari? Jared Anderson Dolan also still needs a contract. But I was looking at the lineup, and the one player that probably will be on the odd man out is Rasmus Kupari, and it's only because he's still waiver exempt. So you can send Kupari down to the AHL, which would be a little disappointing given that he was actually pretty good in the playoffs last year against Edmonton. But it's just asset management. You have to be able to find a way to keep as many guys as you can. And with Lemieux and Grunstrom in the fold, you'll probably be looking at Jared Anderson-Dolan and Gabe Velarde being the extra forwards on the opening night roster.
Yeah, the Kings are going for the brisket over burger approach. They're doing for the slow burn, the long overnight,
Exactly.
burn here. But brisket tastes better, right? And so, I think there's going to be time to earn it. And who knows if it's just for injury reasons? Who knows if they really don't believe in these guys, or they just want a really true camp battle here? There might be a trade coming up because realistically, there might need to be to make room for more money for Mikey Anderson, et cetera. So maybe these are just players that they're signing and they expect to trade from somebody else. But like I said, like you said, Grunstrom is really the only other guy with that grit and that toughness. Maybe not from that the term that hockey people use from a rat standpoint, like Lemieux is, like who likes to instigate. But Grunstrom's not afraid to finish. He's not afraid to stand up for his teammates. And so I understood. Well, I was kind of puzzled by the Elias one, but I understood it. Like, okay, 750, that's nothing.
Yeah.
But like 1.35, that's taking up a roster spot type money. So now you really only have one free spot available at camp, which is right wing 4. And, is that really enough spots to be open for Velarde, Kupari, Jared Anderson-Dolan, Samuel Fagemo, Alex Turcotte? Like, is that really enough spots for them to really have a chance to battle it out? I would say no. And I think they oversigned. I don't know about you. Not necessarily a person in particular, but I think they oversigned one forward.
Yeah, I think that one forward that it probably will be looked at on waivers at one point is Elias Anderson, because I don't know. You don't want to lose Jared Anderson-Dolan. You don't want to lose Velarde. You can't lose those guys to waivers. So with Elias Anderson, yeah, you paid a second-round pick to get him, but if you lose him on waivers, it is what it is. You tried the experiment. He was a top 10 pick. You tried to see what happened. But, I mean, yeah, send him down the AHL if maybe he passes waivers and he becomes a really solid. I mean, we've seen what he's able to do in the AHL, how productive he is down there. So that would be a great piece for the Reign to have. I mean, so if you can have that piece not only as a depth piece and an extra forward on the NHL roster, but think about the experience and the production he's going to bring with Ontario too. So I think that would be beneficial just to keep Velarde and Jared Anderson-Dolan around.
Quick question here from Joe. Who do you think gets most minutes between Grunstrom, Lemieux, and Anderson? I agree with you. # free Carl. I think it's going to be Carl. I think he earned it with the playoff, and he'll be given the most leeway coming out of camp. Let's see. Do you guys see any more moves, trades, deals before the season starts? I do. I don't know in what capacity, because I think the cap doesn't fit. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll see any like more minor moves, but I mean, it's the defensive position's there, and we kind of all you all want to look at the salary cap and kind of see what's available, and Alex Iafallo and Sean Walker's name pops up in terms of trying to create some cap space. So, do I see any moves being made in terms of trades? No. Would I be surprised if Rob Blake just kind of surprised everybody and then threw a trade out for a left shot defenseman? No, that wouldn't really surprise me either, but it would be pretty shocking to see him trade away Iafallo. But I think the roster that you see now for the Kings, I think that's going to be very similar to what we see October 11th, if not the roster we see October 11th.
Do you think there's any team out there that's as inept as Vegas, and we can get a big left-hand E for future considerations?
Dude, that Pacioretty trade is so ridiculous. They're just giving away good players for nothing. Vegas is the worst team at asset management. They can build a team, but don't expect to be on that team for a year or two or more than 1 year. They have no loyalty, and they've shown no loyalty to their team or their players, and it makes no sense why any free agent would even want to sign there, because you don't even know if you're going to be there. You'd have to have a no movement clause tied to your contract for the entirety of it just to make sure that you're not traded, because, hey, if they got an open cap space, you better watch out, because your name's going to be coming up.
We'll come here. Let's see if we got any more here. Okay, Kupari plays with Turcotte and Chromiak in Ontario. Yeah. Fire.
Yeah, that would be great.
So let's get to the other Swede here, the left shot defenseman, which I thought was a very good deal in Edler. $750K, almost nothing. A little bit of a game bonus. I don't know if it's been released on how many games that is, but $750K at minimum. And if he plays well, it's the same thing as any of the other guys we're talking about. He'll outplay the extra 750K. So at most, he's making 1.5 mil for a guy that was like holding down our defense for the portion of the season last season.
Yeah, I think the bonus is at 10, 15, and 20 games, so he gets 250K at each of those marks. But yeah, I mean, you bring back one of the best Corsi percentage defensemen on the team last year at only 750, pretty much NHL minimum. That's huge. That veteran presence. Yeah, I mean, obviously Edler's not this offensive force that he maybe once was, or even can run a power play or anything. But I mean, we saw what he was last year. He was a really productive top four defenseman that played solid positional defense. So the one real good stat I love to look at, it's called relative expected goals percentage. And it pretty much takes the difference between your on-ice production and the production when you're off the ice. And the player that led the Kings was Alex Edler at 7.6%. So, yeah, when he's healthy, he brings a really good steady presence on the left side that is really desperately needed. And I think that if you can keep him to maybe be almost a platoon guy, I think that would probably be the better way to utilize him, because at 41 games, I thought he looked really good. Unfortunately, he had that injury, but it would have been interesting to see how well he would have been produced had he played like 60, 70 games in the year. So I think if you're able to bring, now that Mobiari is back on a contract too, I think if you're able to kind of platoon those two, I think that would be really good for the Kings on the left side.
Yeah, with them not bringing back Will Landon, who just signed with Vancouver before we came on, I think it shows promise that they like Movar, that they are fine with Edler being that seventh guy, maybe platoon here and there, see what they really have in Bjornfoot. It'll be definitely interesting. I think it's a great signing, and maybe one that will even have bigger echoes come the playoff time.
Oh, huge. And in terms of everybody else looking for a left shot defenseman to fill, I think the trade deadline is going to be big for the Kings. So, yeah, we're still waiting for that big offensive left shot defenseman to come, whether it is trade or we were looking at maybe even free agent signing yesterday. I don't think the Rob Blake had that in his mind. So, yeah, the Kings haven't been big players in the rental market, but hey, you come to around January, February, and you're looking really competitive, and we all know that hole is there. Let's see if the Kings dabble in that and use some prospects to make an upgrade.
Yeah, let's switch it over here to our great sponsors in DraftKings from the Hockey Podcast Network. Let's pull it over here. The action never ends at DraftKings Sportsbook, especially in the summer with tons of ways to bet on your favorite sports. You can fuel your fandom and feel the heat of the season like never before. Plus, right now, DraftKings Sportsbook is giving new customers risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's right. Make your first bet up to $1,000. And if it doesn't win, you get another shot to cash in. You could just throw down on all the major action for baseball, golf, MMA, and more. Plus, same-game parlays, spreads, money lines, over and unders, and props. Your betting options feel endless. You could start with MVPs for the NFL, plus 500 odds for Trey Lance right now for my Niners. Best of all, DraftKings is safe, secure, reliable, and you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN and make your first deposit and get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's promo code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook. The minimum age and eligibility restrictions may apply. See show notes in the notes for details. All right, still to sign now. We got everybody's freaking out, right? You got and I think the comment leads here. I think we have one in here on the I saw it right here. Do you guys think Dursey or Mikey are going to be holding out? And that comes in our next topic is who's still to sign?
Mm-hmm.
Break it down for them, Russ.
Yeah, I think obviously Dursey and Anderson are the big names out there. Gabe Velarde still needs a contract, and Jared Anderson-Dolan needs a contract. But looking at the Kings salary cap right now, I believe they have around 4.5. When you look at it online at Puck PD or Cap Friendly, awesome websites, they do include Jordan Spence and Jacob Mobiari in the rosters in that salary cap fold. So if you're bringing in Mikey Anderson and Sean Dursey, you're obviously going to be replacing those salaries too. So there is money, there is room to bring back these players, and I don't see them being too expensive. Mikey Anderson, maybe both of them even probably getting bridge deals, 2-year deals, just to kind of keep them in restricted free agency at the end of those deals. So maybe you're looking at Mikey getting 2, maybe 2.25, maybe even 2.5 at the highest. and Sean Dursey probably getting like 1.5, 1.75. And so I don't see them holding out. I think it was more along the lines of Rob Blake just, hey, I had to make the Kevin Fiala deal, had to get Adrian Kempe signed, and then go through free agency, make those qualifying offers, and then kind of once all that is taken care of, now you can kind of look toward the RFAs that are still available that are a little bit less on the lesser terms of kind of bigger deals. So you got the Kempe deal. He said that in his last interview. That was his main priority. So now that it's done, now that free agency is over, now I'm sure he'll turn to Mikey Anderson and Sean Dursey. I don't think it'll be too big of an issue to get them signed. What do you think, Brandon?
Well, I mean, just like with the brisket analogy, now he's done with his main course. He's finishing with some dessert right now, and what a sweet dish of pie Mikey Anderson and Gabe Velarde and Dursey would be. I think it's something similar, like you said, right? You go with where the priority is, getting the impact player. Boom, now signing your own impact player, and now you don't want to be off the phone for free agency in the draft. Like that's main priorities, and so now the dust is settled. DevCamp is going. You can get these guys kind of hammered it out and kind of see where the dust is settling. And I agree. I think that they're going to be there, maybe bridge deals that you want to get them to be an RFA again at the end of this. I think also if just like Kempe, I think if Dursey and Mikey Anderson believe in themselves, like I think they do, they're going to want a bridge deal because they're going to want to get more money with their next thing. In a recent interview, Mike Yannetti said that Mikey Anderson has one of the biggest drive on the team. Like he believes in himself more than anybody else, and he has that drive and tenacity. And it wouldn't surprise me that he's like, yeah, I'll take a 2-year deal and I'll show you what I got. I'll be a left D1 for the next 2 years. And now you're gonna have to pay me, $4, $5, $6 million. So, you're looking at those types of moves. And like I said, championship teams are built on value. And if you can get now all those 3 contracts that I mentioned before, plus these 2 players that are just breaking into their promise at really low numbers, man, like what a team you could have for quite a good value.
Yeah, I think what's really good, I've always compared this team or the trajectory of this team to where the Kings were at in 2010, 2011, 2012. And I think Rob Blake is doing a really good job. He's not really giving away too many pieces to bring in some top level pieces. He's waiting for those that really good prospect pool to develop and reach their potential to not only just create a team that's going to contend for 2 to 3 years. He's trying to build an actual really good team that's going to be good for a long time. So, I mean, with Mikey Anderson, yeah, you mentioned we're starting to see him develop into a really good defenseman. He's showing that drive on the ice, and I've thought about if we've seen Mikey Anderson. I mean, we're seeing Mikey Anderson be a really good defenseman. He played really well and stood up really well in the playoffs. Maybe they offer him a long-term deal, get him signed to 6 years and just keep him around at a low cap hit, because you know what the floor of Mikey Anderson is. He's going to play really solid 20, 22 minutes a night, really solid defensive positioning. And he's not going to produce that much, but hey, you need that type of player to play with a Drew Doughty or even a Brant Clark that comes up. So I mean, with Mikey Anderson, I think the team should probably look at maybe even locking him up at a longer term just to kind of keep that cap hit down, because who knows, once it's over, he's probably going to be demanding a little bit more when that next deal is done.
I forget who the player was, but it's probably from Tampa because they're handing out 8-year deals like it's nobody's business. But it was like 7 years, like $3 million, like for like a third liner, but they just locked him up for forever. Like, hey, man, if you get a 7x3 for Mikey Anderson,
it'd be
he could
huge.
it'd be a ridiculous value there. Coming in here with the left shot, will Bjornfoot start in the AHL? And I think that he has that ability to, and it wouldn't surprise me if he got 10 games to start the season and see what you have with Morvari and Edler and stuff like that. Will it be a confidence shot to him? I don't know, but you weren't too impressed with him at DevCamp, obviously one day. Where do you think he'll start?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say I was like too impressed with him, but it's pretty much the same Bjornfoot that we've seen, right? Obviously he's still a really young player. He's a first-round draft pick, but I mean, he's got over 100 NHL games already. And the thing with Bjornfoot is he's not a really necessarily bad defenseman, but you're just hoping for more. And more is there, but we just haven't really seen it. And I think that's a really good question that he brings up, if Bjornfoot can start or will start in the AHL. And I think he might. I think that's a really strong possibility. And I go back to asset management. Tobias Bjornfoot is waiver exempt. So if you want to be able to keep all these players on the team and in the organization, you're going to have to probably make some tough decisions. And maybe Tobias Bjornfot is one of them, because I would rather send Bjornfot down to the AHL waiver exempt than try to send Moviari down to the AHL and possibly lose him on waivers. I think that would be really bad. So, I mean, we saw it a little bit with Kale Clegg. I mean, yeah, maybe we overhyped it a bit, but I really liked what I saw with Moviari. So I think he would probably earn a spot on the NHL roster, at least to start the year, over Tobias Bjornfot, and maybe we see Bjornfot start with the Reign.
Yeah, I think asset management, they haven't been afraid to stop doing that,
Yeah.
And this, maybe be a little crystal ball, but maybe Bjornfot is the next Kempe. Like, really just inconsistent, needs more time than maybe we thought, because he came out guns blazing, and it just needs more time to find that consistency to be the top guy that we thought, right? If we flash back, captain for Team Sweden, Steady Eddie. Oh, I hear, oh man, he's going to be Drew Doughty's partner, all this kind of stuff like that, and had so much promise. That promise is still there. Mm-hmm. He's still young, right? And so maybe he's just that guy that's going to take, more time for that consistency to come, right? A lot of people are saying, hey, it needs to be year 4 after the draft for you to really make an impact in the NHL. Well, he's already made that impact. He's already played 100 games, but maybe that consistency will come with more seasoning.
Yeah, and he just turned 21 in April, so still a really young player. And we've seen Bjornfot so much already that we expect, or we kind of look at him as almost like a veteran. But yeah, he was drafted in what was it, the same draft as Byfield, I believe, so, or maybe before that. But
it was Turcotte.
The Turcotte draft. That's right. Sorry. So yeah, I mean, we still haven't seen what Turcotte can do. And look at Tobias Bjornfot; he's already played 100 games. So we're still waiting to see Alex Turcotte just play 10 games in the NHL, let alone 100. And Tobias Bjornfot's made that jump. But yeah, maybe even just give him a little bit more time in the AHL. I don't think it would be bad for him. I think it'll even be a shot in the arm to kind of boost his confidence a bit. And maybe you see him be the number one player called if there are any injuries in the lineup.
I mean, there has been players, right? Elias Anderson went down, found his game. Mm-hmm. You have Velarde went down, found his game. Maybe it's just time. And Richard coming in here with the dream pairing, Bjornfot and Spence, top pairing for the Reign, would be quite good for them, especially since the defense really struggled for that team last year, put Villalta in a lot of tough spots. And then Villalta also had to be between the pipes for 40-plus games. There was a lot of injuries moving on for both teams last season. Let's get into
you can develop some chemistry with Bjornfot and Spence too, so they can bring that chemistry up to the NHL. I think that would be great.
A little transplant there.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's go around the league. So we already talked about the most puzzling move, which is the Pacioretty move. And I don't even understand it. Like, they trade a first, a second, Tatar, whatever, to get him, and then just let him go for nothing. But obviously the biggest move announced was the Gaudreau move across the league, deciding to go to Columbus. You saw it in the press conferences today. Really good for them, and it was kind of out of the blue there because they weren't really front runners in anything. And it seemed, based on the draft notes or the notes that I've read from the press conference, that Columbus didn't even know that he was interested until he was like, yeah, I want to go there. Like, oh, if you really do, then let's start making you some offers, And so it just seemed, because, the Columbus finally broke the players don't want to play here mold with Johnny Hockey.
Yeah, it was my first reaction to that was, ooh, I wonder what Flames fans are thinking right now. Because, yeah, the whole talk was that he just wanted to be closer to home, closer to his family, and then he goes to Columbus. So it was really surprising. But, I mean, Columbus is a team that's on the up and up. I mean, they've drafted 2 of our favorite players from the draft this past year. David Jiricek, you really liked what he had. They brought him in, and they got Denton Matejchuk, which was Ryan Sykes' favorite player. And then last year they got Kent Johnson, which was my favorite player in the draft. I really like what Columbus is doing, and I don't think it's that surprising of a move for Columbus. I mean, people were talking about, oh, he wants to go play for Columbus and just not make the playoffs. I'm like, oh, well, I mean, they have a really good team. Laine is still there. Maybe that wants to keep Laine around. They still have Roslovic. I mean, they have Zach Werenski. They have a really solid core being built, along with all those really good draft picks that they have too. So I really like what Columbus is doing. But yeah, looking at the Pacific Division, I mean, Vegas is just still trying to figure out how to run a salary cap. They want to bring in any contract they can, but they have to ship away good players to do it. And the Pacific Division is, you look around, the Kings got better, and a lot of the good top teams are getting worse. Gaudreau left Calgary. Pacioretty left Vegas. I mean, Edmonton is getting a little bit better, but who knows? They gave away 5 and 5 to Jack Campbell, so we'll see if that move pays off. But I think
Hey,
the
don't
Kings are.
don't 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 talk bad about Soups. All right,
I
Soups is my boy.
don't know. I don't know that contract. It seemed too high to me. I don't know what you thought. You look. I mean, goaltenders were getting paid left and right. What did you think about that deal?
I think the fact that they had to deal with the ageless wonder and Smith for like the last couple seasons, they were like, I'm going to pay anybody that's willing to come here. But I mean, he was an all-star last year, and not that Edmonton is less of a hockey town than Toronto, but we all know Toronto's the mecca of reports. So like, you let in one bad goal, you have to hear it from 70 different reporters every single night, and so maybe a little bit of that, and maybe it was just the fact that they got the biggest offer from him. But you look at Jack Campbell, played well and they got an all-star bid, was relatively healthy for most of his career with the Kings, and then with with Toronto, Kemper has been injured at every stop, right? And he was the other big guy. Holtby is probably going to retire. So you're seeing like a lot of these things being moved around. Could they have made a smaller move, one of those trades for like Grigoriev, like the Avalanche made? Maybe, but it seemed to me like they wanted to lock in a guy, and like Campbell played his best hockey last season and led Toronto to a first place bid. So he's definitely an upgrade over Smith. So like I think that it might be just somebody to solidify there. Do you think he gets eaten up by Canadian media again? Like, because there's no out for him after 5. Like it's 5 years. Like
yeah. I mean, I actually don't think. I was going to mention that too, and someone brought a good point to me the other day when yesterday when Campbell signed was, when you're able to deal with the media in Toronto and you go pretty much to the same media almost in Edmonton, I think that was probably one of the reasons or one of the things that they looked at in terms of bringing in goaltending. Because you have reporters asking their players why they're so pissy. It's just you have to have players that have a little bit more of a backbone to deal with all that. And Jack Campbell he's a great guy. He's a team culture guy that players can rally around. So I'm sure that was taken into consideration too by Ken Holland. But the Oilers, they're going to be a team to beat. You're able to bring back Evander Kane at his low deal. I know his ex was making a lot of noise about him coming to LA, but that didn't really make a lot of sense. So for him to go back to Edmonton at that low cap hit, the Oilers are going to be good, and maybe the Kings and the Oilers are going to be making another trip to the playoffs and face each other once more.
Yeah, I mean, Sharks weren't really in competition, but longtime rival Burns on the way to Carolina. Carolina's building a juggernaut. They're doing whatever they can to bring people over there. DT coming here, JT Miller may be gone from Vancouver, whether it's right before the season or maybe at the deadline. It just seems like they need some cap space there. Vroman comes here. I think Vancouver is a dark horse for top 3 in the Pacific. Well, so does Jay Fresh, and it pissed off a lot of fans there that the Kings were not making the playoffs. But Kings have done enough to stay more than competitive if they are healthy. And I think that this team here is more than enough to stay competitive. And a lot of teams got worse, and we got better. And I also think maybe fans don't want to hear this, but I also think we outproduced our roster last season.
Oh, 100%.
So what will they, everybody's like, oh, we'll get Dewey, we get all these guys back. And I keep saying every time, hey, it doesn't make us a 115-point team. It might not even make us a 110-point team. I think we'll be better. I think we'll be more consistent on a night in and night out basis. And I also think we won't have to scrap together 3-2 games and make a last minute goal to win these things. But the ability to score goals and compete with Edmonton when they're on fire and they're doing that way, I think you will see the power play go up. The 5-on-5 goals will go up because of Fiala. And like I said, rising tide raises all boats. So all that will trickle down to the second and third line. And I think the Kings will be in good position to repeat as playoff contenders.
Yeah, there's a couple things that we're going to be watching, and we'll talk about this more throughout the summer. Quentin Byfield's development, Quentin Byfield and Arthur Kaliev's development. What kind of production do we see out of them this season for the Kings? Because they're going to be coming into their second full seasons with the Kings, and we want to start seeing a little bit more production from them. I don't think they're going to be 20, 25, 30 goal scorers, but I think we'll see a little bit more from them. Also, what's going to happen in net? What's going to happen with Cal Peterson? Cal Peterson's going to have to step up and start showing that he's a $5 million goaltender. Because, like we talked about Jack Campbell, all these goalies are getting paid pretty much the same as as Cal Peterson's getting paid. So you're starting to get these comparisons. Like, would you rather have Billy Huso at the same price as Cal Peterson? Would you rather have Darcy Kemp or Jack Campbell? All these other goaltenders are all getting paid around $5 million a year. And that's what Cal's being paid. And he hasn't really shown that he's a $5 million goaltender yet. But this will be a big year to show it. And once Jonathan Quick is gone, he's going to have to take the reins because there's no one else right now.
If it's a good leeway here into draft and dev camp, and we'll go deep dive into the draft prospect. I'm sure you guys, have done a lot of research there. I thought the draft was kind of interesting just as a whole. Multiple interviews with the Yannetti said that a lot of their guys got sniped right before them, and Jack Hughes was a part of that tier that they really liked. What was your first impression of him at dev camp? Obviously scored the first goal in the scrimmage.
Yeah, Jack Hughes. I mean, the biggest talk with Yannetti was his high hockey IQ, and that's really hard, something hard to see in a couple of days or a couple of drills that a player is going to be running. But yeah, he's a really good skater. He's got a really good shot, and it was actually really impressive. So, I mean, we're still talking about a young player who jumped into the college years or into his college career a lot earlier than some people would have expected. He could have started. He could have kept going in the USHL, maybe played a little bit less competition and score a little bit more, maybe drafted a little higher, but he wanted to show that he was willing to jump into the college ranks and prove his worth there. So I think it'll be a good player, and I think it was a really good pick for the Kings. But in the draft in its entirety, it was a little surprising, a little bit away from the norm than what the Kings have kind of been with. They've always seemed to kind of go with the players that are rated highest and have the biggest upside. But this time it seems like maybe it's a little bit what we kind of expected, I guess, is they were just going for home run picks, players that Yannetti really liked, that he thinks they can develop into really good players. And you saw that with some of the tall players taken. And I really like what they got out of Salin in the fifth round. I think that's going to be a really good pick, the defenseman from Finland. And he can turn into that Helge Grans type offensive force in the AHL, maybe even be a solid NHL defenseman too. So it was a good draft for the Kings. It's nothing really noteworthy, I guess, coming out of it besides some tall players like Jack Sparks and Caleb Lawrence. But yeah, all in all, just another solid showing from Yannetti and crew.
Yeah, I think they were trying to move up, is what he said in the third. No takers, and so you have to kind of adapt. You have to, like Bruce Lee, be like water and make what you have in front of you. And so they move back, and they get a lot of slow burning prospects. The guys that are going to take time, guys that missed time during the season because of injury and maybe didn't get a full look that maybe could have went rounds earlier if they did. Especially their 7th round pick, Caleb Lawrence, right? Played 2 games.
Yeah.
And he was talking about scouts going to his practices to see if he was worth, trading a 7th for a 7th, right? But ultimately, 7th round picks only have a 2.7% chance of making it to the NHL. So they took a little bit of a swing there on a guy that's, 6'6", 6'7". And, it's really something that we can kind of see there. And I think you look at a lot of these prospects are in the AHL that are that are big top prospects. They're going to try to make their in now. You're going to need those slow burning guys that are 4 years out to backfill these guys that are going to be graduating. We'll follow it up here. I know we only got a couple minutes left. CJ coming in here. Russell, who surprised you at development camp? Just talk about going when you went the first day. Like, what were some surprises or maybe standouts for you when you were there?
Well, the NHLers all looked really good and showed their confidence and their experience pretty much. So Quentin Byfield, I thought he looks great, really good in terms of his skating. He's looking a lot more smoother. I'm going to go back there tomorrow. I'm going to try to get a question and see if he's done something with his stick, because apparently that's the biggest question everyone wants to know, if he's changed how long his stick is. So I'll try to get that question in there. But Arthur Kaliev also looks really good. Jordan Spence, they're all looking really solid. But in the non-NHLers, I like to call them the prospects still in the minors or the junior leagues. I really like what I see from Alex Laferriere. I think he looks a lot bigger in person and on the ice, like a stockier guy. And he moves around really well. He was doing really good in puck protection against Andre Lee, who's a monster of a man, and Sammy Hellenius, who was looking really good with there, and he has a really good shot too. So I'm going to be paying attention a lot more to Laferriere playing in Harvard this year, and then Francisco Pinelli. I'm really impressed with Pinelli. He's a hound on the puck, and he's really good through the neutral zone. So that's another player I'm going to be watching a little bit more in Kitchener this year in the OHL.
Yeah, both those guys are a lot of draft picks and going to be making waves, right? It's the draft year +2 where you're supposed to see that really big development. And and you're going to be able to see maybe Pinelli come up to the AHL and pretty soon. Well, I like what we're hearing here, and we're going to get more DevCamp stuff coming later, roster construction. As always, you guys can find our articles. We're pumping them out daily at hockeyroyalty.com. Go get your shirts and your Hockey Royalty gear. Podcast coming out. We're trying to get plenty of guests for you guys, plenty of content. Subscribe here on YouTube, and tell all your friends, man. We're growing. We're being
That's
here.
right, yeah.
Quest for 1,000 subs. We just crashed over 200. So thank you guys for the love and support that you have given us. Also, thank you to our guys at the Hockey Podcast Network and our sponsor, DraftKings. And as always, go Kings, go.
Go Kings.